This is a very important nakuda. This is a very important point. The Tanakh, which is the Chumash, the writings and the prophets, that's the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bible is, Christians, that's the backbone of Christianity. But it's not the backbone of Judaism. Judaism, our backbone is the oral tradition, the oral Torah, which is in the Talmud. And from the Talmud, we're told what goes into the Tanakh. But the Talmud itself is Judaism. The Talmud itself, an oral tradition, as it's brought down in the Talmud and it's carried over into the Rishonim and the Achronim and these later commentaries and what we have today, that is Judaism. So I'm not sure what post-Tanakh means. I don't understand what that is. I don't understand that statement, so maybe you want to clarify.
Oh, do you think the Tanakh is part of Judaism?
Absolutely, Tanakh is part of Judaism, but it's not the backbone of Judaism.
Do you think the Torah is an essential part of Judaism?
What do you mean the Torah? What does Torah mean to you?
Well, the Torah has two primary meanings. In its narrow meaning, it means the 5 books of Moses. In its broader meaning, it means all of the tradition that comes from that.
Okay, this Torah can take on a lot of different meanings. It can be the oral Torah, it can be the written Torah, it can be the Chumash, as you mentioned. When I use the word Torah on its own, I mean everything. Everything grouped together. Judaism is based on the Torah. The Torah is the oral Torah and the written Torah combined.
But that's not the only meaning of Torah. It also has when we study this week's Torah portion, nobody is up in the air. Oh, does that mean some 12th century rabbinic commentary? Is that what we're going to be reading aloud in Shul?
Right.
No,
like,
the Torah also has a narrow meaning. It also means the 5 books of Moses.
Absolutely. But when I say is, like you say, oh, the Judaism is a Torah religion. Absolutely. But what Judaism is not is on its own biblical religion. It's not. It's not a biblical religion. Because we can survive, this is a very important point, we can survive doing Judaism even if the Tanakh was never written down, even if the Bible was never written, it wouldn't affect us at all. Because all of the laws are in the oral Torah. The Talmud, the Medrash, all of this, all of that, the Mishnah and the Gemara, that is Judaism. And from that, we have all of our laws that we need. And everything that we're doing right now, we'd be sitting here, we both have the beards, and we both have the tzitzis, and we'd have all of these things because we know it from the Talmud. We would have never read a Bible. Okay, so we'd have 612, because one of them is you're supposed to write a Sefer Torah. You're supposed to write a Bible, right? But other than that, you wouldn't know any different, because we can survive without it. But what we couldn't survive without is the Talmud. Because if we only had Tanakh, you wouldn't even know how to put on tefillin in the morning, because it doesn't explain it. You don't even know. Show me where it talks about tefillin. Show me where it tells you anything. You wouldn't even know to keep kosher. Because if you try to follow the Bible, and that's all you have, you're going to end up with some sort of perverted religion that doesn't even remotely resemble Judaism.
But I've never suggested we only follow the Bible. Just because I talk about the Bible, just for the same way if I talk about, hey, Kim is a hot chick, I'm not saying that therefore there are no other hot chicks, that any other woman in the world has no value. If I say Kim is a great girl, I'm not therefore saying every other female in the world and in the history of the world has no value. I'm just talking about Kim. So when I talk about the Bible, I'm not saying the Bible is Judaism and everything outside of the Bible is not Judaism. I never suggested that, never thought that, never occurred to me, and I don't think anyone who's listening that would occur to them too. The Bible is one key essential part of Judaism. It's only one. In practice, the way Jewish religious life works, yes, the Talmud and the oral tradition is more important for how we practically lead our lives in the Bible. But when I talk about the Torah in its narrow sense, meaning the 5 books of Moses, or when I talk about the Bible, I'm not saying the Bible and the Bible only shall be our creed. If I believe that, I'd be a Protestant. Protestantism is the only religion in the world which holds that only one book contains all the essential necessary truths for that religion. Every other religion in the world has a tradition, including Judaism. So, but to go back, my point was simply there's no notion in the Torah, meaning the 5 books of Moses, there's no notion in the Tanakh, meaning the Hebrew Bible, that we shouldn't try to understand God's laws. and I think that's an interesting beginning for the discussion.
I still don't understand what post-Tanakh means. I still don't understand that.
Well, you know what the Tanakh is?
Yes.
Okay, so the last book of the Tanakh was composed, depending on your point of view, was put down in final form either 200, 300, 400 years before the Common Era.
Okay, I don't know what the Common Era is, but
we are now living
I'll
in
tell
year
you,
2010.
I don't know any of those. I don't know how to justify it to the. Not, I only know Jewish.
When did the Hebrew Bible? When was it last?
It was written in what's called the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, which is called the Men of the Great Assembly.
Which was when?
It was 70 years after we started the exile in Babylon, right?
So it's about 2,500 years ago.
Exactly.
Okay, so if the last books were composed then, if I say post-Tanakh, I'm meaning after that time period. It's not that complicated.
Oh, okay. So after those books were sealed in the times of the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah and times of Ezra and all these people.
So if I say post-Tanakh, I mean after Ezra.
And then you want to say that what happened after that?
Then we started having explicit development of the idea that we shouldn't try to understand the laws of the Torah, meaning the 5 books of Moses. Prior to that, we don't have evidence in the Tanakh of that.
But you just hold on. Let's clarify this. You say we don't have evidence in the Tanakh, and I'm saying I don't care because I don't look to the Tanakh, right? I don't look to the written Torah to get my questions on Judaism. I look into the oral Torah, and
why would you not look into the? Why would you not look into the Tanakh?
Because we don't we don't poskin. We don't decide things based on what.
I know, but I'm not asking about poskin.
No, I understand.
I'm asking about understanding a perspective on life.
Okay, because Judaism is, like I said, is based on the oral Torah. So the first place I'm going to look, if I have a question on something within Judaism, is inside the Talmud. That's the first place I'm going to look. Or I'm going to look in what's called the Shulchan Aruch, which is
the 15th century code of Jewish law.
Right. Because these laws, see, let's understand something. The oral Torah was given at Mount Sinai. It was given at Mount Sinai from God to Moses, and he turned it over to Joshua, and it was led, all the Jewish people held on to it for 1,000 years, and then it was put into the Mishnah in the same person, Ezra, in the same Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, in the same Men of the Great Assembly, already started what's called compiling the Mishnah. We already had the oral Torah. We already had it in a specific form that we still see today that's written down 2,500 years ago. So where am I going to look if I have a question on, in Judaism? Am I going to look in what's written here, or am I going to look in what's now available to us, it's actually written down, was the oral? I'm going to look into the oral because that's exactly what God told Moses. This is what the laws are. And they came all the way down for whatever, 1,000 years or something, and we've written down, and this is what they are. Now, the reason why I say I don't understand post-Tanakh is because everything that came after post-Tanakh is just clarification on what they already knew to be true before the Tanakh was written down. There's no surprises here. There's nothing new under the sun. The Mishnah, the oral Torah code that we have, was already compiled at the same time that the Tanakh was compiled.
So which sections of the Mishnah go back to Sinai?
All of them.
Oh, so when it says Rabbi Yochanan says this, or when Rabbi Hillel says this, Rabbi Hillel didn't live until 1,200 years after Sinai.
Oh, I can answer that for you. That's very simple.
How does what Rabbi Hillel say 1,200 years after Sinai, how can you then say that comes from Sinai?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that, because I would love to answer that. The oral Torah, the way it works in the Talmud, it never says Omer Hashem. It never says God said this. What you have is rabbis saying things in the name of God. It's the way that they heard it from their rabbi, who 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 heard it from Moses, who heard it from God. And this is the law that they heard. And this is what's been passed down generation to generation. Everyone was walking around quoting these laws year in, year out for 1,000 years. This is what the laws are. Now, why is it quoted in Rabbi Hillel's name as opposed to, let's say, Rabbi Shammai's name? Okay, the answer is because when the Jews started separating and we were being dispersed into different places, some of us went into Babylon, some of us slept